by climate change and environmental changes. So what more does defence do, or what can it do?
Yeah. Well, it's of absolutely no surprise to me at all to have heard recently that the Australian Chief of Defence Force was speaking on the risks of climate change from a national security perspective, and he's absolutely correct to do so, particularly in our region where there are some quite near at hand emerging outcomes, like countries disappearing under the sea as the sea level rises. Also noting too that we're seeing, and this is only very recently, that we may be reaching a point where, as the polar ice caps melt, the amount of carbon which is in those that has been there for centuries will be released and into the atmosphere, and so now we have a tipping point potentially that might accelerate the whole thing. Defence has got an obligation, as every part of the country has. This is, after all, the only planet we have as far as we know. There is no planet B. So all of the government agencies need to be thinking about this. What can Defence be doing? I think there's a lot that could be done in terms of greening Defence's footprint, making it less reliant on carbon-based fossil fuels, and moving more to sustainable energy sources in the future, not just for the platforms, which is at the difficult end, but in our bases. You know, a fighter base in Katherine in the Northern Territory, you would think, is superbly placed to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, self-sufficient in terms of its own energy consumption as a base. There's a cost associated with that, but there's a significant benefit. Reducing Defence's own carbon footprint is what I'm really talking about there, and doing that in a as wide a way as is possible. But then there's an energy security piece to this, which is critically important as well. Whilst our platforms, so many of them, remain reliant on burning fossil fuels for their motive power, jet aircraft burn through vast quantities of aviation fuel. Ships burn through vast quantities of less refined, but still refined, fuels. And we are not secure as a nation in our supplies of those products. All the refined products come from overseas, and mostly from one of 4 ports, all in Asia. And several of those mean that the ships carrying the fuel have to transit through the South China Sea. And the South China Sea is in the news for a whole bunch of reasons that are worrying to us from a national security point of view. How quickly we run out of fuel obviously is a very critical limiting factor on the effectiveness of the ADF. So we've got to think more seriously about that. We've got to think more seriously about what might be the nearer to home things, like small Pacific Island nations disappearing under the sea. What are we going to do about that as a nation? What's Defence's role in that? And Defence will have a role, unquestionably. So the challenges in terms of climate change in a national security sense are huge. They truly are huge. And Defence industry can have a role to play if we think about it and prepare to invest time and effort and energy into, on the one hand, making ourselves more able to withstand those climate shocks. And even today, you know, the drought, the effect on our food production capability, global food security, of which Australia is a key player. All of these are key factors. My crystal ball is no better than anybody else's when it comes to all of this, but I can see that Defence has got a key role to play. Defence industry is a part of that, and can and should, I think, be playing a significant role in the future.